You see people who base all their actions off of fear, and a lot of those actions tend to bring horrible repercussions to the rest of the world. I feel like the world could go either way, and I want to be on the side that's actually trying to help the world be a better place.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. What's up, my friends? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 151, total episodes number 258. Thank you so much for being here for yet another episode. I am just so honored, completely through and through, every single episode that you're here for yet another episode. If you're a first-time listener, thank you so much. That means so much to me, listening to this on either YouTube or any podcast app. So cool. Today, my guest is Chris Albert. He is a Marine. He is the host of the Warrior Soul podcast and so much more. He has a fantastic YouTube channel entitled the same thing, website. You'll be able to see all of that and more in the show notes. He also worked in the fitness industry and he lost everything, admittedly, through the podcast. We talked about all of these things. He was sleeping in his car, sleeping on, doing couch surfing and all of that. But what he did was epitomize what this podcast is create your career. He created his career. He created something out of nothing and he has come so far since then. I just love that he holds true to the create. So remember, you can find this podcast and all the conversations, the contemplations, 2 segments within the podcast, all on audio. Head over to YouTube, subscribe, share with a friend, head over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and rate 5 stars and tell me what you like. And if you don't like it, still tell me what you don't like so we can fix it and make things better. I cannot wait to be able to make things better if I'm lacking somewhere. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
Thank you for having me, man. I am honored to be here.
I'm always honored and always excited. I feel like that's my new tagline when I start these, is just saying like how absolutely pumped I am to be able to do this. And like we were talking for a second ago before we started recording, like despite all of the issues we're having with internet and with Zoom, obvious issues, it's so cool that we can still be able to do this and still be able to maintain that connection despite being so physically separated. So I appreciate you being here, man.
Oh, absolutely, man. And if you told me back in 1999 that someday I would be spending a lot of my time speaking into a plastic box to somebody who was thousands of miles away, I would have been like, the hell are you talking about, man? What kind of acid are you taking? So yeah, you're definitely right about that one.
Yeah, it's crazy times. I love being able to just, we're in such a dynamic, always changing situation right now. We kind of know what's happening, but we don't. But the best thing is just to continue just going with the flow to a certain extent, prepare as much as you can and do that. So before we get into the rest of the episode though, I'd love for you to be able to introduce yourself to some of the people that may not know who you are.
Yeah. Well, my name's Chris Albert. I run the Warrior Soul podcast, and essentially what we do there is we empower U.S. military veterans to live their best lives by delivering tools, tactics, strategies, and ideas that help them show up as wiser, stronger, more capable human beings in the civilian world. And I hate saying it that way because it sounds like so rehearsed and everything like that. But I see it like a million times every week. And a lot of times I'm on there talking about ideas, but I normally am talking to somebody who's far more accomplished and much smarter and more intelligent than I am. So I've interviewed some great people like Robert Greene. I've had on Ben Greenfield. I had on Grant Cardone, a bunch of really awesome guests. And it's been my honor, my privilege to do that podcast for the past 4 years. So it's been really awesome.
Good for you, man. That's a long time to be doing this. I've been doing this for 2 years, and I know how much work it takes to be doing all that. But first thing I would say is, like, I feel as if, you're a very humble individual, but give yourself some credit, man, because what you've done, for 4 years of podcasting is substantial. And like you said, to be able to, those guests came on your podcast for a reason. And I know you know that. And that's one of the things I picked up when I looked into your Instagram profile, your webpage, when I read, your About Me, did some of that stuff. And I was like, damn, like that was one of the best, just for your feedback, some of the best About Me that I've read on any website of, you're the 151st guest. I've read a lot of About Me's for the people that I didn't know as well. And I just really liked your humility, but your transparency in the fact that you just said, like, this is me, this is what I've done. It may not, I think you said something like, I was just like an average Marine at best or something like that. But
yeah,
it's so funny, man. But look at you now though,
And that's the thing, man. Like, I never wanted, part of this is when somebody's listening to my show, I want them to feel as if they're listening to a friend, not somebody, honestly, if you looked at my military record, you'd be like, what the hell? Like, what's this guy? You know what I mean? Like, I definitely wasn't the best Marine. I definitely screwed up a lot. I screwed up a lot in the civilian world too. And I'm still screwing up right now as we speak, you know what I mean? Yeah. And I try to be very open about that. And I think one of the things, the guy slips my name. He's a Green Beret. I have his book up on my shelf there, but he talks about the power of story, right? The power of story. And he learned how to the power of story while he's serving as a Green Beret, because their mission is to go out there and create assets in foreign countries and work with the people. But one of the things he said, it stuck with me, and it was that your story, if you're not being honest about your story, you're not using your story to serve others. You're using it to serve yourself. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted the podcast to be about serving others, to be about serving this magnificent community of people who, in my opinion, is a sleeping giant in this country. I think that, if you look at the veteran community, any branch of service, whether you serve 4 years or you serve 20 years, there is so much talent there, so much leadership potential, so much ability. And I feel like if that community just wakes up, gets a nudge, there's so much we can do here in the greatest country in the world. And, we can do so much to keep it the greatest country in the world,
Yeah. And I love that. And I love that just coincides with a lot of what I'm trying to achieve here. I fell somewhere in the middle. I was in about 9 years when I got out, and I just saw, there's a lot of reasons that I started my podcast, but I just felt as if there was something different calling me, and I wanted to be able to, and I guess I'm going to even sidetrack my own self and say that, I started it while I was active duty. And so you can do this stuff while you're active duty, but, I wanted to take it a different direction. And here I am. And, I've told my story. This is not the time to do it, but I love that you're being able to do that like that. So how long did you say you were in
the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
6 years total. And I was both reservist and active. Okay. So started out as reservist and then got activated after 9/11.
Yeah.
The thing about being in something in the Marine Corps for me, the Marine Corps creates these hero archetypes. I think they're like the best service at doing it. And obviously, like, I'm a Marine, so I obviously think the Marine Corps is best at everything, right? Any Marine's got to say that, right? But you get these heroes like Dan Daly and Chesty Puller, and John Basilone, and there's this aura about that. And your drill instructors, they fit this kind of archetype too, and the thing about it for me was, when I got out, I hid out for a while. Mm-hmm. I went straight into school.
Okay.
I went to work on my master's degree. I was working on a PhD, and I kind of kept my head in the ground, in the sand, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And wasn't like paying much attention to the news. And then when I decided that being a professor wasn't for me, because I was doing my PhD in political science. And, essentially what's occurred over the last 10 years in the social sciences, and this isn't even a political thing. If you are a rationalist, you start to get considered a Nazi, by various political science departments. And so I saw the writing on the wall, and that's when I left. And then I got into the fitness industry, and I was working I was one of the founders of a gym called Metroflex Gym in Long Beach, and it's funny because that gym is extraordinarily famous today. It's one of the most famous gyms in the world. There are a lot of personalities who came out of it. C.T. Fletcher,
Yeah.
who's a big time YouTube star, Mike Rashid, Frank Madrano. All these people came out of it. And this is what I'll say, and this is going back to the humility thing and how I've screwed things up. I ran it for 3 years. Never, I made $500 a month for 3 years.
Wow.
Right, $500 a month for 3 years, and that led obviously to financial ruin. I made the genius decision of getting married while I was doing that, and that obviously didn't turn out well either. So that whole thing happens, and you know, I ended up in a position where I lost all my ownership shares and was living out of my car, showering out. Luckily, I'm still friends with the owner of the gym. I'm showering there,
Yeah.
cruising on people's couches, things like that. And so I started an online training business. I was like, all right, the gym didn't work out. I'm a good personal trainer. I was good at nutrition. And so I started a YouTube channel. And when I started the YouTube channel, I started getting addicted to it because it's kind of like therapy. I'd been going through all this crap, went through this divorce, was like lost everything, didn't have anything except for my dog and a garbage bag full of clothes. Somebody gave me the laptop. Mike Rashid actually gave me the laptop, and started recording myself, and it started to be like therapy. And I started talking about nutrition, and then lo and behold, I'm giving value, and then people call me up. They start asking me if they can work with me, right? And that's how I got my first clients.
That's awesome.
And so I'm slowly building that up, and then I earned enough money to get out of that car and get into a rented room, right? Long story short, I got myself into a much better position, right? From basically having nothing and being homeless to getting myself into a rented room, having money coming in, more money than I needed at the time. And I started looking at the news. I started looking at the world around me, and I started seeing these high rates of veteran suicide. And, back to that idea of heroes, I'm looking at some of the stories of some of these people who ended up taking their own lives, and they were much better men than me, much better men and women than me. And I'm saying, what the hell is going on, man? Somebody's got to do something about this. And considering my training as a social science, now I know that I sound like I have an IQ of like 90, but my training as the PhD, I learned a lot of psychology, right? So one of the things I learned about was social proof. And if you ever read that book, Influenced by Cialdini, he talks about this, right? The idea that if you see somebody else doing something, then it makes you more likely to do it too. And that's true for suicide as well. Mm-hmm. It's very, very widely published that if you start talking about suicide en masse, then suicides statistically increase, particularly amongst people who share the same characteristics of the victim. So I said to myself, I'm seeing a lot of these organizations with the number 22 popping up all over the place, and I love them. Like, I think they were trying to do their best, but I didn't think it was the best route to go. I think we needed something else. We needed to show, we needed to not be focused on keeping veterans from killing themselves. We needed to be focused on getting veterans to actually live. And so that was the premise of why I wanted to start my show. I didn't think that would translate well into a 2-minute YouTube or a 5-minute YouTube video. So I decided that it had to be a podcast. And that's how the Warrior Soul podcast started.
Dude, that's awesome and powerful. And I don't want to discount some of the things you said earlier, that the veteran community needs to wake up and that they have so much to offer. And you're right. There is so many people that are just forged through fire, through tough, stressful, shitty situations. And it's amazing what they are able to accomplish. And I love that you see that and you're sharing that. And then within yourself, again, the humility is great with you. Because what I love in your story and why you're so perfect for my podcast specifically is not only because you're a veteran, but you are a human being that admittedly, you were living in a car, didn't have much going for you there. But what you did, though, And to reiterate why you're good for this podcast, why you're great for this podcast, is because this is to create your career, and you literally created your career. That's what you did. You went out there, shit, what do I do now? You just started creating some
Yeah.
stuff, some YouTube, couch surfing in your car, and slowly but surely there's this evolution of just what can I do, what can I do, what can I do, and it just reminds me of the mindset or the quote of not thinking what can I do, but what can I do. And I just feel like that's a lot of the way you took action. Like no matter what happened, no matter what decisions you did make, what are the best decisions I can make for myself now? And then take it a step further. Everybody already knows what I'm about to say, but my stipulation always is to have a guest on here that is helping other people. So all despite you creating your own career and doing all these things, create, you are also helping other people, and you're doing that through your YouTube, your podcast, and then what we talked about just now about recognize that in the veteran community, and that's why I love your mission.
I appreciate that, man. And the thing is this, like, a lot of times it doesn't seem like there is a way, right? Sometimes like you can't see the forest for the trees. And the thing about social media and YouTube for me was like, I didn't want to do it. Like, I had people sitting me down and being like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you actually taking advantage of this Instagram thing? And I'm like, Instagram, I don't want to be posting pictures of myself. Who the hell wants to see that? But at the same time, when I started to see the power of it, I started to see how you could actually put things out there that could help people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you approached it with that mindset, that is what's going to move you forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to be about giving value. If it's not, we've gotten to a point now where I think people are very sophisticated, and they can tell when somebody's just in it for themselves, when somebody's just doing this, or when somebody's just trying to flaunt themselves, right?
Sure.
And you can get very popular on Instagram, YouTube, all of these platforms, and you can get popular in a way that's never going to make you money, or that's never going to help you move forward, or that's never going to help you to move to help other people. And I think a lot of people have found that out over the last few years, because you see people who've built, somewhat of a personal brand, but maybe the personal brand's not built around altruism. It's not built around the right motives. It's built around something else. And that's why you see a lot of these people who might have like hundreds of thousands of followers who are living at home with mom,
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I do believe that we're still in the infancy of the information age and the technology age, but we're far enough past it, into it, living it for long enough that it's starting to be able to identify who's full of shit and who's full, and who's not. And I kind of wrote an episode. I have another segment in the podcast I just talk by myself, and I was talking about mentorship, and it was entitled The AntiMentor. And there's a lot of quote unquote, I hate the word influencer, but there's a lot of influence out there, and I hate it. So I agree through and through with you, and helping in ourselves recognize that, and then for other people too. We don't want that to be misguided and listen to the wrong people, because just like a good mentor could be a good shortcut, you could have some bad mentors, and they could set you back a few steps. Yeah. So I'm really curious. I love what we're talking about and what you're delivering so far, but what are some of your favorite behaviors, or some of the behaviors that you think have led to the success that you've seen, and quote unquote, however you want to define success in your own words?
I mean, I hate to say this because like everybody says it, but waking up early. Like I'll wake up. I'll purposely wake up early, not because it's like hardcore, not because like I'm trying to be Jocko or anything like that, but I wake up early because it's the time when I can be alone with my thoughts and do things that I couldn't do in the middle of the day. Right. And do things that I want to work on. So like from 04 to 07, that's my time. Like that's when I do what I want. And sometimes what I want is to sit down with a good book and a cup of coffee and just read. Sometimes what I want is to write. Sometimes what I want is to create something. But that first part of the day is spent on trying to do something productive that's going to make me into a better person,
Mm-hmm.
or help me to create something that I'm going to be able to put out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helped me out so much, because I found that when I was waking up later and I was sleeping in, I think sleep is extraordinarily important. I suffer from autoimmune disease, which is something is also in my history. I almost died from ulcerative colitis a couple of times.
Wow.
And this past year I did. Yeah. Sleep is extremely important for keeping those symptoms at bay for me. But I found that if I sleep into like 7, or even if I sleep into 6, I'm in a far worse mood. I feel like things are catching me by surprise, and I feel like I'm not prepared to go into my day like I normally would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I almost say, like, so what if other people say that? I think it's with the best of intentions. If we can all share similar behaviors that contribute to our version of success, then so be it. And I love that for you to be able to understand that. Again, like, I'm huge obviously on like the create aspect of all this, and I feel as if you're carving out a time of the day that is going to be for you, and that you're able to get your stuff in line, and you're able to set yourself up for success for the rest of the day. So yeah, I always kind of default back to, if you want to do it in the morning, you want to get up early, that's fine. For me, it sets the tone for the day, helps me start out with a big win or a couple wins or something like that. But I feel as if, if you get it done, you get it done, get your results, whatever makes you feel good. And I think that's one of the things I don't want people to miss is, you said, it makes me feel good. That's what makes me feel the way I feel for the rest of the day. And you feel like you're behind. So I think that's such a good point, because it's tailored to you. So if you're listening, maybe getting up at 4 a.m. is not going to work for you. I get up at 5:30 a.m. That works for me, and I still feel great for the day. So there's a huge gap there in time. So you got to find what works for you. So all in all, that is a great answer. So again, I always like asking people why they help other people. I feel like we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but would there be anything that you'd want to add to that? I will go even further. Like, were there any specific events in your life, even dating back all the way to like childhood or anything, that really just set the tone for you wanting to help people, even before you knew that creating this podcast or the YouTube channel was going to be the way you went?
Man, what I'd say is this: I grew up without a dad, right? And there's a whole crazy story about that too. But I didn't have like a lot of male mentors in my life growing up. And I always felt like I didn't quite know how to move forward from certain things. Like high school came. I didn't quite know how to deal with that at first. Getting out into, going to the Marine Corps, they tell you how to deal with it, right? Yeah. The drill instructors are just like, yeah, that's how you're going to deal with it. So, but everything else, going out into college, the civilian world, grad school, my business career, I didn't have anybody there to be like, okay, hey, this is what you got to do. I eventually learned that I had to find mentors, but when you're a kid from, who didn't have a dad, didn't have a network or anything like that, mentors are really hard to come by in person. So for me, I feel like we're in this age where things could go either way, right? We're seeing that right now on the internet. If you can go to certain corners of the internet where you can learn about anything, right? You can pull out your phone, you can learn about anything. You can learn how to set up a business, you can learn how to design products, you can learn how you can learn about 5th century Mongol history if you wanted to, right? But then you go to these other corners of the internet, like the deep, dark corners of the internet, and you see people tearing each other apart, right? Yeah. And you see people jumping on each other and being really negative. And you see people who base all their actions off of fear, right? And a lot of those actions tend to bring horrible repercussions to the rest of the world. And I feel like the world could go either way, and I want to be on the side that's actually trying to help the world be a better place. And that's my simple answer.
Yeah, I love that, Chris, because I 100 million% feel like that. And I feel At least when I say it, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm always embarrassingly like, it sounds cheesy that I honestly feel like I can change the world, and I'm not trying to like put myself on a pedestal. And I know you'd probably say the same thing, but I mean, and again, this is a cheesy cliche saying, but it really starts with one person. I mean, like we were talking offline, right? Right before we started recording, and I was like, by what I want to do with this podcast is spark the conversation. So if you're listening to this, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But what I really want to do, and I know what you want to do, Chris, is spark the conversation in somebody else, light that fire and be able to take this. And now you just like, you go talk to your friend about this kind of stuff. And I mean, because if we didn't do it, then they wouldn't do it and they wouldn't pass it on to their person and that person and so on and so forth. So yeah, the more people
Well,
that think like this, the better we can be off.
yeah, and I think it is. I mean, and maybe this is the most unhumble thing I'll say today, but I think it is possible to change the world,
Yeah.
right? Regardless of what your audience size is,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because I honestly think that as podcast hosts, we determine the quality of our audience, right? If somebody's absolutely negative and absolutely the type of person who is, just sees the world as a horrible place and that people can't be redeemed, they're probably not going to want to listen to my show in the first
Mm-hmm.
place, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And same thing with yours,
Yeah.
right? But if you get somebody who's on the fence and they could go either way, you could change their perspective, right? And then the other thing I'll say is this. I mean, and this is one of my affirmations when I'm doing my show is I believe that there's a future president of the United States or a future congressman or a future senator or maybe many of them listening to my podcast, right?
That's cool.
I
I like that.
really do believe that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And I act as if, I act as if there are. I act
That's awesome.
if somebody's going to be a future world leader, every time I'm putting that show on, I am thinking about my words in a way so that, what I'm telling them might lead to worldwide repercussions down the line. And that's happened in the past before.
Mm-hmm.
People don't know this. I mean, like you take somebody like Adolf Hitler, right? You know, he was widely influenced by the thinkers of his time. People like Wagner. And Wagner was a horrible racist. He created beautiful music, but he was a horrible racist and had these crazy views and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do think that the thoughts and the language we put out there can help people to see the good in themselves and to bring value to the world.
Yeah, that's such a incredible and profound way to think about it. Really powerful. I love that. I gotta keep that one close for when I do it as well. And I'd like to think I think about that on a certain level, but I think the specifics that you gave are, I mean, because it could be true, and we may never know, but I don't think we need to know. I think just knowing that it is enough.
Right.
That's really powerful. So I want us to shift back to your podcast and your mission a little bit. I wrote down here your 4 pillars, essentially. I always talk about the pillars that my podcast stands on. So I wrote, because you were writing about health, fitness, self-mastery, and wealth. And so with the time we had left, I kind of wanted to, kind of, if you could, explain a little bit why you picked those 4 and what they mean to you.
Well, health. So again, health is something that you don't know how important it is until you lose it, right? And, for me, I mentioned I have autoimmune disease, and over the past year, I went through one of the worst flare-ups of ulcerative colitis in my life, and I lost 50 pounds at one point. If you saw me 8 weeks ago, my face was like caved in, and they just put me on new medications called biologics, which help to take down my immune system. And so, I used to be a competitive bodybuilder, and fitness was always important to me, but I didn't consider that fitness after a certain point, right? Because I was still getting sick, and I was still, I was still dealing with so many limitations in what I could do. So when I look at health, I think, there's nothing more important than that. Not even fitness, right? When I look at fitness, I look at it as freedom,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
The ability to do what you want when you want to do. So if I want to go climb a mountain right now, I want to be able to do that. If I want to, when I'm 65, 70, 80, 90 years old, I want to be able to play with my grandkids and throw them up in the air, even if they're freaking 20 years old. Right. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. That's a buff grandpa.
Jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I look at fitness as freedom. It is essentially bodily freedom. And put them in health together. I mean, that's everything. And then when we talk about wealth, wealth is something that I wish I'd learned about when I was younger. I wish I had a better sense of it because, I grew up, my mom, single mother, she worked 3 jobs and everything like that. She told me, Christopher, go to college because you're never going to have to work like I do. And to be honest with you, I wish and I love my mom. She did the absolute best for me, but I wish I had a better financial education than that, than to say, hey, you know what, get as much education as you can, go take out as many student loans because you're going to be able to pay them off. No, that's not the case. Right. Yeah. So I try to educate people on all the ways I screwed up my finances. And I'm not going to come at you like, hey, I'm balling right now, I got my Bentley, because that certainly isn't going to happen anytime soon, right? What I'm talking to you about is things I wish I knew back then that I'm getting from people who are a lot smarter, who've been doing this a lot longer than I have. And then self-mastery. This is something that I discovered a while ago, and it's helped me through absolutely everything I've ever been through. Right. Because I've been through a lot, obviously, from losing everything to being sick, to dealing with business stuff, to going through even what we're going through right now. And it's the idea that you can't allow, you're not your thoughts, right? You're not your thoughts at all. Your thoughts, they manifest, and they manifest without you having the ability to control them. And a lot of people don't realize that, but you start to realize that after a good amount of practice, a good amount of meditation, and a good amount of self-observation. And if you just react to every thought that comes up rather than thoughtfully responding, then you're going to get yourself into a host of a lot of trouble. For a long time, I was controlled by my thoughts. I was controlled by reactions. And when I finally learned that, hey, you might want to sit back and think about this for a minute, or, you might want to try to see the good side of things rather than automatically going to the negative side, that negative thought that's coming up in your head, then, you are going to be a much better person, and you'll be a much happier person, right? Regardless of what's going on around you, right? Because trust me, I've been in situations where my whole world was falling down and didn't know where my next paycheck was coming. And, the things that got me through that was having that ability to take a step back and saying, all right, you're not going to die. You're not going to starve to death. You're not going to go homeless again. And if you do, it's okay, because it didn't kill you, right? Yeah. You built up, right? So that's why self-mastery is important to me.
Yeah, I love all those answers. And obviously there's a very deep connecting reason why you selected all 4 of those. And I love that it's a well-rounded, it's a holistic approach to be able to approach all of those. And I just love that, the way you're delivering this in a sense of like, just this is what worked for me, and this is what I've done, and I want to share it with you. And I don't think we need to be pros at everything. And I think a lot of times, like, what's much more relatable is somebody like you that's actually lived it, and especially admittedly, like you said, lost a lot and started again with nothing. But you had mentors, and you never gave up, and you created all these things for yourself. So to be able to define those and put them into different categories like that, and it's so important. So I think that's such a great note to end on, and I really appreciate this. This has been so fun. But before we get out of here, please tell us where we can find you.
Absolutely. You can head over to www.warriorsoulagoge, that's AGOGE.com. You can find the Warrior Soul podcast there, or you can find it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. I've been slow on YouTube lately because of the Zoom problems we've been experiencing and things like that.
Yeah.
So I haven't been posting video, but I'm still up on iTunes, still up on Stitcher, still up on all of those platforms. Published 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Sometimes recently now I've been doubling down and going for 4. So you can hear me 4 times a week. This lovely, silky, so soothing voice that I've got over here. So
it is, man. No, you're a great guest, and I can see why you're a great host, and it's been a pleasure to have you on here and be able to discuss this stuff. I want to reiterate again for the second or third, maybe 4th time, that it's to create your career, and that you're really just leveraging that word create. And if it doesn't exist, that's why I picked that word, is because you created it. You know, maybe sometimes it doesn't seem like you have the path, or you know what's going on, or a lot of times you don't know, but just start moving. Like, you just started doing things, and it led to where you are now, and there's still a lot to do, and that's awesome. That's fine, and that's fun, and I can't wait, quite frankly. So I love that. So Chris, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it. You all will be able to find all that stuff and more in the show notes, as always. It's a pleasure, man. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Oh man, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for the awesome work you're doing, man.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks. Have a great night. See ya.